What's your name?
Hi, my name is Kambiz Shekdar.
What's your favorite cooking spice?
I don't know if this counts as a spice, but I would have to say butter, because whatever you add butter to makes it taste better.
When you hear the phrase, united we stand, divided we fall, what does that mean to you?
I think that means, and it applies to almost any area. If people come together behind a common goal, we can achieve a lot more than factions warring against each other.
I work with TFKTWA, training foster kids to work with animals.
Mm-hmm.
Our dual mission is to prepare kids for adulthood and help animals at the same time. These kids soon will be getting their own apartment for the first time. What cooking advice would you give them?
The best advice I got was in a restaurant in Paris. Between working in labs, I always wanted to be a waiter, and one summer in college and grad school, I got a job in a cafe, in a restaurant in Paris, and they had me make a couple of dishes. They showed me how to make this one dish called boeuf bourguignon, which is a meat stew with red wine and carrots and onions, and you cook it for many, many hours, and it's really delicious. And they put me in front of the kitchen and showed me all these ingredients, and they gave me a couple of tips, but no exact recipe, this many grams of this and that many liters of that. I asked them, what should I do? And they said, mix these until it tastes good. I think in the kitchen, as well as in biology and in the lab, you have to get a feeling for this. You have to dive in. You have to mix things and get a feeling in your hands. What makes a recipe really come alive?
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, you've mentioned lab. You're wearing a lab coat. Why?
I'm a biologist and biotech inventor, so
you have a special T-shirt on. Can we see the T-shirt?
I do.
Can we get a close-up of the T-shirt?
It's like a Superman T-shirt. It says, "Let's cure AIDS," from Research Foundation to Cure AIDS, which is a nonprofit I started because 18 months of COVID, we have multiple vaccines worldwide. And it's time, after 40 years of AIDS, it's time to develop vaccines and cures that can really end AIDS for good.
Tell me the name of your foundation again.
Research Foundation to Cure AIDS.
And so what are you guys up to these days? You're not a new foundation. You've been around for a while, right?
Right.
Tell us more.
Yeah, part of why I started this is when I was a student at Rockefeller University, which is here in Manhattan on the Upper East Side. I invented a biotechnology. My professor and I and my colleagues, we started a biotech company. And then when I heard about the Berlin patient, who's the first guy who was cured of AIDS, he was cured back in 2007, 13, 14 years ago now, I realized our technology is one of the ones that holds promise to take this first success and maybe, based on the science behind this success, stitch together a sequence of steps to create a cookie cutter cure, something that's safe and effective that can be rolled out worldwide. So I left my biotech and started this organization to add what we have to other efforts that are ongoing to move this field forward.
Now, recently you applied for grants. Could you tell me about that?
Sure. Even though the first person was cured 14 years ago, the first time that the NIH said, okay, we have to do something about this was actually very, very recently. At the end of 2019, just before coronavirus hit, NIH and Gates Foundation announced prioritizing the development of a cure by making $200 million available. So it's a great new sign that this space is getting the attention that it hasn't gotten for so many years. And shortly after that coronavirus hit, I'm not sure how these plans might have been affected, but I was really happy to see that for the first time ever, Tony Fauci's division at NIH, which has been in charge of HIV/AIDS research for 40 years, for the first time ever last year, they issued a call asking for research proposals to cure AIDS. And we submitted, we and our research collaboration partners teamed up, and we submitted 2 different grant applications based on our technology to help increase the efficiency of existing cell therapies to cure AIDS.
And for a layperson such as myself, could you explain what it is that you do in your research? Because you're looking for a cure, so I mean that seems kind of obvious, but how do you do that? Are you looking at blood? Are you looking at medicines?
Right. So, it's interesting because so far if I can give you an overview of the field in general.
Yes, please do.
When AIDS first hit, we didn't know what the virus was. People figured out what's the virus, and then people found antiretroviral drugs. These are chemical compounds, pills you eat, and they attack the virus. They attack different points in its life cycle. But the cure points to something else. It points to natural biological resistance to HIV. It points to cell therapy, not pills. And the whole field emerged when the basis go to the early days of AIDS, when a lot of gay men were dying, and some gay men realized they're not dying. Their friends have died. They all had the same kind of sex, the same kind of sexual risk that put their friends at risk, and where their friends died, but somehow they were surviving. And so they went to their doctors. They said, something's going on. I think I'm resistant. And over time, people found out the basis for this resistance, which is HIV. If you get exposed to it, kind of like a boat to a dock, it doesn't just latch on anywhere. It has to latch onto your cells to some things called docking factors, which are proteins known as CD4 or CCR5. HIV has to actually latch on really tight, and then it injects your cells with its genetics, takes them over, and kills them. Some people who are naturally resistant have a short version of one of these docking factors, so the virus cannot.
It can't connect.
It can't connect. And this had been known for decades, literally decades. But nobody thought to use this resistance as a pathway to cure HIV until a leukemia doctor, not an AIDS expert, called Gero Hutter in Berlin. He remembered in med school hearing about how some people are resistant. He had a patient who had leukemia and AIDS, and he figured, well, I have to give this guy a bone marrow transplant to cure his leukemia. What if I find a donor who's not only immune matched for his leukemia, but who's one of these rare HIV-resistant people? Maybe this new bone marrow transplant, bone marrow transplants works because the new stem cells give rise to a new immune system. But in this case, if he got it from a resistant person, maybe it would be HIV resistant, and it worked. It cured him of AIDS and leukemia. But people thought he was a quack. The experts in the field were blindsided. Here's a leukemia doctor. What's he talking about curing AIDS? No one thought curing AIDS was possible. This was in 2007. We've lost a lot of time in moving this science forward. In 2020, just about a year ago, the second patient got cured using the same method, and shortly after that, NIH announced we're going to put $200 million behind cure efforts.
What is something that you would want the public to know that you think that they don't know, that you think is important?
I think the biggest obstacle I've run into has been the shame that's tied to HIV, and I'm not talking about stigma, which is external. Stigma is where people living with HIV feel like they tell someone and they're discriminated against, and they are. A lot of people are still scared of it. There's still a lot of, negative experiences that people face from others, from their job, from their friends, from potential sex partners, from sex dating apps, all kinds of things. But there's another layer that's even harder to address, which is internal shame. People feel like, someone said, you don't ask for a raise if you don't think you deserve it. And people say, someone told me, maybe people are not asking for a cure because they don't think they deserve it. People still feel ashamed that they did something to catch this. It was in their control. There's feelings of guilt sometimes mixed in with it. And I think this holds people back. There's no shame in having HIV. These are biological viruses that are adept at infecting us. Viruses have been around since we've been around and before.
Right, even before, I would say.
There's no shame, and we need to really get over these feelings of shame and stigma to say we deserve cures. We need our research labs to be investing in cures and moving these forward, and we demand a cure. Just living with HIV is not the end. That's not a solution. That's just a temporary measure.
So tell me more about your foundation and the events they do. I have participated in some of those events. Do you have any events coming up? I think we auctioned you off. Yes, you auctioned me off for a date.
Great.
And
at our Love Labs event.
At the Love Lab event, which we should do a Love Lab here. We'll do an MNN Love Lab.
Sounds great.
In the future. Tell me about some of the other events and things that you have going on.
You know, medical philanthropy, pushing science and medical innovation forward. The champions in this field are people who are affected by a disease, their loved ones who want to step in. There's not yet awareness about us. There's a lot of AIDS organizations. Most address people living with HIV. There are legal issues, housing issues, things like this, all well and good. But people don't know that there's actually a group, I think we're the only one that has our own biotechnology that's looking to develop a charitable cure. A cure not for the richest gay guys on Madison Avenue, but for everyone. A cure that's really globally accessible.
Right, because I think that's one of the tenets of your, if that's the right word to use, of your foundation is that you want to have the cure available to everyone.
That's right.
For free, right?
That's right. At cost. We will have certain costs to do it, but we're doing it via a nonprofit, which means maybe the Gates Foundation supports us, maybe government supports us, so that if you are unable to pay for the cutting edge medicines like a cure, you're not just out of luck because you can't afford the cost of it. I, as a scientist, wanted to take the technologies we have in this space and develop something that can help all people, not just rich people. I believe that we can get rid of AIDS for good. We can wipe it off the face of the earth completely. And people say, oh, it's so complicated. It's hard to even make it. How would you ever make it roll out? Well, when the first computers came out that filled entire rooms, people couldn't imagine an iPhone. When the AIDS drug cocktail was first developed, it was George W. Bush who said, let's make this available around the world. At that time, people thought, no way can these drugs be available. You have all these many pills you have to take at this hour, that hour, that hour. It will never be available worldwide. We now know that once you make it, then you scale it. And I'm not giving up until we make a cure that can be available for everyone who needs it, and we ensure that it is rolled out in Africa, in every corner around the world until we get rid of AIDS.